Imagine discovering the one thing you spent your entire adult life trying to forget. Imagine believing that the past was finally buried, that the years had scabbed over the wounds, that time had softened the memories, that grief had settled into something you could carry without trembling. And then, suddenly, one letter, one sheet of paper, one sentence written in your mother's unmistakable handwriting, rips everything wide open again. That's exactly what happened to Prince William and Prince Harry. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. At 43 years old, men with families, histories, reputations, scandals, responsibilities, they thought they had survived the worst chapters of their story. They believed Diana's death was the final tragedy that shaped their lives. They believed that whatever secrets remained from the 1990s had already been exposed, picked apart, analyzed by the press, and reburied. They were wrong, because the real secret, the one that changes everything, had been hidden for 30 years, and the person who hid it was the man they least expected. Let me ask you this. What would you do if you discovered a letter from your mother predicting she would be silenced, and implying that the people closest to her might know more than they ever admitted? Would you scream? Would you cry? Would you demand answers? Would you bury it again? Or would you finally confront the people you've spent decades avoiding? This is not a soft story. This is not a sentimental recollection. This is the moment two brothers were forced to look into the darkest corner of their past, together and without warning. And it all started with a vault. A private vault. A locked, restricted, off-limits room built deep inside a royal residence. The kind of place only a handful of people even know exists. A vault belonging to King Charles. Inside it sat a box. The box held an envelope. The envelope held a letter. And the letter held the last words Princess Diana ever wrote about the fear that haunted her final weeks. The palace, of course, never intended for it to be found. But fate, or something like it, had other plans. Now here's what's strange. For 3 decades, nobody talked about this letter. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody leaked its existence. Nobody hinted that there was anything hidden in the shadows of Diana's final days that the world hadn't already obsessed over. And yet there it was. Handwritten, signed, dated, impossible to deny. Weeks before her death, a message from a mother to her sons. One they would only read as grown men, with families of their own, long after her voice had been silenced by tragedy. But before we go any deeper, ask yourself, why would King Charles hide something like this for 30 years? What was he afraid the world would see? What would it change? What would it expose? Those are the questions William and Harry asked the moment they laid eyes on the letter. But let's go back to the moment everything began. It was an unusually cold morning. A quiet, heavy kind of cold, the kind that hangs in the air before something life-altering happens. You know those days, right? When the world feels still, as if holding its breath. William had been summoned first. A short message. No explanation. Just an instruction. Your presence is required. Harry received a similar message hours later, this time from a different source, but with the same urgent undertone. The kind of message that makes your heart beat a little faster even before you know why. Neither brother knew the other had been called. Neither expected to see the other walk through the same door. And neither imagined that the meeting had anything to do with their mother. Because after 30 years, why would it? But then the vault door opened. Thick, metal, reinforced. Like something meant to protect treasure or hide guilt. A royal aide lingered at the entrance, his expression unreadable, his hands shaking just slightly. A detail William noticed immediately. Harry noticed something different. The way the key turned too slowly, like the person turning it wished the door could stay locked forever. Inside, the room was dim, intentionally dim. No sunlight. Just the cold glow of overhead lights and the soft hum of temperature-controlled machinery. Shelves lined the walls, filled with decades of files, artifacts, sealed boxes, and items whose existence the public was never meant to know. But at the center of the room, on a plain wooden table, lay a single object. An envelope. Aged at the edges. Slightly yellowed. The ink slightly faded but unmistakably handwritten. And on the front, the name. William. Harry saw it at the same time William did. But William froze first. Have you ever seen grief resurface? Not just remembered, but resurrected? That's what happened to William. You could almost see the moment he stopped being the future king, and became a 12-year-old boy again. Scared, lost, confused, standing outside a hospital trying to understand what death meant. Harry stepped closer, breath unsteady, and whispered something no one in that room could forget. "This is her writing." And it was. The slant of the letters, the loops of the Y, the distinct way Diana wrote the date. All of it unmistakably hers. But here's the thing. The envelope wasn't supposed to say William's name. It wasn't supposed to be addressed to either of them. It wasn't supposed to exist in this form at all. Because this letter, this bombshell piece of history, was never meant to be seen by her children. The original version had been addressed to someone else entirely. So why was this version here? Why was it rewritten? Why did it end up in Charles's personal vault? And here's the bigger question. Why did King Charles keep it instead of destroying it? Think about that. Really think about it. If you were trying to bury a secret, really bury it. You wouldn't hide it. You wouldn't store it. You wouldn't lock it away. You would destroy it. Fire. Shredding. Anything. But Charles kept it. For 30 years. And the fact that he kept it? That's what made the brothers more suspicious than the letter itself. William reached out first, fingers trembling, and touched the envelope like it might burn him. Harry stood behind him, arms crossed tightly, heart pounding so loudly he could feel it in his ears. And then William opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper. The handwriting unmistakable, the tone urgent, the date chilling. Weeks before her death. The first line? That alone shattered them. Because the first line didn't read like a warning. It didn't read like a note. It didn't read like a casual concern. It read like a prediction. A prediction written by a woman who had spent years surrounded by cameras, scandals, betrayals, paranoia, half-truths, whispered threats, and a world that adored her publicly but cornered her privately. The letter, without revealing what it said just yet, implied one devastating idea. She knew what was coming. Harry's voice cracked. William's eyes filled with a kind of pain only a son can understand. And then one of them, no one is sure who spoke first, whispered the line that echoed off the cold stone walls. She knew, and he did nothing. That wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't even the beginning. It was the spark. Because once the letter was opened, once the first page was read, once the brothers realized what had been hidden from them for decades, everything changed. Their relationship, their trust in the monarchy, their understanding of the past, their view of their father, their belief about what really happened in the final weeks of Diana's life. And most shockingly, their belief about what still remains hidden. Because as emotional as the first page was, as devastating as the first line was, they quickly discovered something far more disturbing. The envelope held more than one page. And the second page? That one wasn't addressed to William or Harry. It was addressed to someone else entirely. And whoever that person was, their connection to Diana might rewrite everything the world thinks it knows. The day the vault was opened did not begin like a historic moment. It didn't begin with fanfare or ceremony or any of the polished routines we associate with royal life. It began with silence. A heavy, unnatural silence. The kind that makes you feel something is coming long before you know what it is. You ever wake up and just feel that something is off? Something in the air? Something that your body registers before your mind does? That was William's morning. He didn't know why. He didn't know what. But the moment he opened his eyes, he felt a pressure in the center of his chest, the kind that arrives on days that will end in disaster, revelation, or confrontation. He just didn't know which one. Not yet. The call that shattered the routine. It came at 6:42 a.m. Not 6:30. Not 7 o'clock. Not any normal time when palace officials typically contact him. 6:42. The kind of time where people either call by accident or because they're terrified. William glanced at the caller ID. No preview text. Just the name of a senior private secretary he rarely interacted with anymore. Instinctively, he answered. There was no greeting. No, Your Royal Highness. Good morning. No, I apologize for the early call. Just 7 words. There is something you need to see. Direct. Cold. Urgent. William sat up straighter. What kind of something? A pause. Not the kind of pause where someone is thinking, the kind where they're choosing what not to say. Something your father kept in the private vault. Another pause. And he wants you to see it today. William's hand tightened around the phone. The private vault. His father's most guarded space. A location in the palace even senior officials rarely entered. A room associated with secrets, inheritance documents, restricted archives, and personal items that would never make it into the royal record. Why would Charles summon him there? And more importantly, why now? Across the ocean, another call. Harry's morning looked nothing like William's. He had a different life, different scenery, different responsibilities, different relationships. But the call he received carried the same chilling tone. His came at 11:42 p.m. local time, which already told him something was wrong. Palace officials always adjusted for time zones unless the matter was urgent or unavoidable. And like William's call, it came with no explanation. Just a request. Prince Harry, you are advised to return to the UK immediately. Something of significance has been found. At first, Harry thought it was a mistake. Some mix-up, some bureaucratic confusion. But then he heard the voice. A voice he recognized. A voice that never called him unless something serious was happening. The voice lowered. It concerns your mother. That was all it took. Harry didn't ask questions. Didn't ask for details. Didn't demand to know why he needed to be told at midnight, or why this couldn't wait, or why, after everything, the palace was contacting him at all. When a son hears the word mother, everything else disappears. He booked the next flight. 2 brothers, 1 destination. William arrived first. He didn't ask where Harry was. He didn't ask if Harry had been summoned. He didn't even consider the possibility. He assumed, as he often did, that his father wanted him alone. The heir, the future king, the one who needed to understand the implications of whatever was about to be revealed. But as he stepped into the marble hallway leading toward the hidden staircase that descended into the vault level, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned, and there was Harry. No cameras, no entourage, no tension or politics or media narratives in the room. Just 2 brothers whose lives had spiraled in opposite directions, suddenly pulled back into the same orbit. They stared at each other, not in anger, not in warmth, not even in confusion, in shock. You're here too? Harry asked. William nodded. You got the same call. Harry exhaled. They said it was about her. Neither said Diana's name. They didn't have to. The descent into the vault. Have you ever walked somewhere you didn't want to go, but knew you had to? That's what the descent felt like. Stone steps, cold air, a silence so thick it almost had a sound of its own. A senior security officer walked ahead of them, holding a keyring so large it looked medieval. And in a way, it was. The vault's system had been upgraded, modernized, reinforced, but the original architecture was still centuries old. With every step downward, the temperature dropped. With every step, William's chest felt tighter. With every step, Harry's jaw clenched harder. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The air said enough. Something waited for them. Something that had been hidden from them, intentionally, for decades. Something someone had decided could no longer be hidden. Finally, the corridor ended, and before them stood a steel-reinforced door. Not decorative, not ceremonial. A door built to hide something. The officer inserted 3 keys, one by one. Then tapped a digital code. Then placed his palm on a scanner. Locks released slowly, each one echoing through the chamber like a warning. Inside the room, the vault was nothing like Harry expected. It wasn't dusty. It wasn't cluttered. It wasn't filled with piles of old royal documents or relics stacked in corners. It was organized. Too organized. Temperature controlled. Humidity managed. Dimly lit. Shelves labeled in precise categories. This wasn't a storage space. It was an archive of things someone wanted kept, but never seen. At the center of the room sat a table. On the table sat a box. On the box sat a single envelope. And that envelope had William's name on it. Handwritten. Slanted. Elegant. Familiar. It took William a moment to breathe. Harry froze behind him. Because the handwriting wasn't Charles's. It wasn't a secretary's. It wasn't an aide's. It was Diana's. Have you ever seen someone recognize something so deeply, so instantly, that every muscle in their face changes? Harry whispered at first. That's her. Not. That looks like her writing. Not. I think that's hers. Just. That's her. William felt his throat close. He didn't reach for the envelope. Not yet. Not because he didn't want to. Because he was afraid. Afraid of what it might say. Afraid of what it might confirm. Afraid of the possibility that this single envelope could undo years of healing. Where did this come from? He asked, voice barely audible. The aide hesitated. We don't know. Harry snapped his head toward him. What do you mean you don't know? The aide swallowed. It was discovered in His Majesty's private vault space during a recent audit. It was inside a sealed box with the former Princess of Wales' initials. Harry stared at him. Initials or signature? Initials, the aide said quickly. Harry's expression darkened. Diana used initials only for private correspondence. Letters meant for a very small circle. Not the public, not the press, not the palace. A private letter, rewritten in her hand, addressed to William. But why? And why was Harry not addressed? The moment before the opening, William finally reached forward. His fingers hovered over the envelope, shaking so slightly he didn't even notice, but Harry did. Do you want me to? No, William said quietly. I have to do it. Harry nodded and stepped beside him, not behind him. He wasn't the younger brother in that moment. He wasn't the rebel, the outsider, the critic of the institution. He was simply the son of a mother they both missed. William slid his finger under the flap and paused, not for theatrics, not for attention, because he knew, they both knew, that opening this envelope would change something between them, something fundamental, something irreversible. Once they learned what was inside, there would be no going back. He opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, a second sheet behind it, and something small, a photograph, perhaps, tucked between the pages. William lifted the first page, then froze. Harry leaned in. What does it say? William didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, because he couldn't. His face drained of color. His lips parted slightly. His eyes scanned the page again, as if he didn't believe what he was reading. Harry placed a hand on his shoulder. What does it say, William? William swallowed hard. It says. His voice cracked. He lowered the paper. She knew. Harry blinked. Knew what? William shook his head. She didn't just fear something would happen. He lifted the letter slightly. She predicted it. Harry stiffened. Predicted what? William closed his eyes. That she would be silenced. Harry's breath caught. And that. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Because the last line of the page, the line that made William's hands shake, said the one thing that would haunt them both. She knew. And he did nothing. But that was only the first page. The second page, still folded, sat untouched on the table, waiting. Silent. Heavy. Dangerous. The second page sat there like a living thing. If the first page was a spark, the second was gasoline. Waiting, daring, almost taunting them to unfold it. But before they even touched it, before a fingertip grazed the paper, something else caught William's eye. The date. A simple line of ink. A familiar structure. Day. Month. Year. But the moment he saw it, everything inside him went still. You ever have a moment where time seems to fold in on itself? Where the present and the past collide so violently that you feel both at once? That's what the date did to William. Because the handwriting said it all. Dated mere weeks before the Paris crash. Not months. Not sometime earlier that year. Not a vague period during her separation. Weeks. The proximity alone was enough to knock the air out of the room. Harry leaned forward, reading the date for himself. His eyes widened, then narrowed. This can't be right. It's her writing, William whispered. It's definitely her writing. Harry shook his head. No. The date. The timing. Why would she write a letter like this right then? Who was she trying to warn? Who was she talking to? The aide stepped forward cautiously. We believe the letter was. Harry snapped. You believe? Or you know? The aide swallowed. We believe it was written at a time when the princess expressed heightened concerns. William shot him a sharp look. Concerns about what? The aide hesitated. That hesitation said more than words. The weight of a date. The brothers had seen countless documents relating to their mother. Newspaper clippings, reports, transcripts, biographies, investigations. But they'd never seen this. A letter dated so close to her death it practically pulsed with dread. The handwriting was slightly shakier than her usual graceful slant. The ink pressure varied, suggesting she wrote it quickly, emotionally, with urgency, almost as if she knew time was shorter than anyone else believed. William whispered the date under his breath again. Harry clenched his fists. That's only, what, 3 weeks before Paris? Maybe less. William nodded. They both knew the timeline. They'd lived it. They'd studied it. They'd been questioned about it, haunted by it, defined by it. But seeing something handwritten, so close, so intimate, so foreboding, it was different. It wasn't history. It was a A message from their mother. A message delivered 30 years late. Ask yourself, if you found a letter from someone you lost decades ago, a letter that suggested they anticipated something terrible, what would it do to you? Would you read every line over and over? Would you question everything you thought you knew? Would you ask yourself what you missed? What you were too young to understand? That's exactly where William and Harry found themselves. Suspended between the present and the past. Between sons and men. Between truth and fear. The atmosphere in Diana's final weeks. To understand why the date shook them so deeply, you need to understand where Diana was emotionally in those weeks. After her separation, she had taken back control of her life. Her public image. Her narrative. Her identity. But she was also increasingly isolated. She was adored publicly, but privately? She carried fears she confided only to a select few. Friends later recalled she felt watched, tracked, hunted by the press, misinterpreted by the crown, betrayed by people she once trusted. She'd expressed concerns about being silenced, metaphorically or otherwise. Not the dramatic kind, the whispered kind, the kind said behind closed doors. And she wrote it down. Weeks before she died. Harry stepped back from the table, pacing slowly, trying to process the implications. When she wrote this, he murmured, she must have felt something was closing in. William looked up. She must have been terrified. But the part that strangled them both? She didn't send it. It wasn't mailed. It wasn't delivered. So what was her plan? Was she waiting? Stalling? Trying to decide whether to reveal its contents, or whom to trust? Or was she prevented? That's the question that stopped both brothers cold. The hiding of the letter. The existence of the letter raised one of the darkest questions of all. How did it end up in Charles's private vault? Harry voiced it first. Why did father have this? The room fell silent. No one dared answer. Because any answer would be damning. William looked at the aide. Was it found in a box marked with her initials? Yes, Your Royal Highness. And the box was stored alongside father's most private documents. Yes. And this box hasn't been moved in decades. That is our understanding. Harry's jaw clenched. So for 30 years, he kept this hidden. And nobody thought to tell us. The aide hesitated. We are not permitted to speculate. But they didn't need speculation. They needed only logic. For 30 years, King Charles had access to the one letter that could have reshaped everything. The narrative, the investigations, the emotional truth. But he never showed it to the sons who lost their mother. He sealed it away. He kept it. He hid it. And the date, printed in Diana's slanted handwriting, made the act of hiding even more unforgivable. Because he wasn't hiding a memory. He was hiding a warning. The first page, again. William lifted the first page, scanning it once more. Not for the words, but for the date. It sat in the upper right corner. A date burned into their memory. A date that carried weight. Danger. Premonition. Harry exhaled sharply. You know what this means, right? William didn't answer. Because yes, he knew. The timing opened up questions they had spent their entire lives trying not to ask. Questions that pierced them now with renewed brutality. Harry forced the words out. She wrote this when she thought someone was going to hurt her. William's eyes glistened. She wrote it when she didn't feel safe. Harry stepped closer. And someone in this palace, knew. The air froze. That was the first moment the reality of it sank in. This letter wasn't a relic of the past. It was a clue. A clue they never knew existed. A clue hidden from them by someone they trusted. A clue dated at the most critical point in their mother's life. No wonder William's hands shook. No wonder Harry's voice trembled. Because what do you do when you realize your mother may have predicted the circumstances of her death? And that the man who raised you kept her prediction in the dark? The unanswered question. But the timing raised another question. One the brothers were almost afraid to ask. Why did she write it then? Why not earlier? Why not during her marriage? Why not during the height of the press frenzy? Why not during her harshest public battles? Why in those last weeks? What changed? What scared her? What did she learn? Who contacted her? Who warned her? Who threatened her? What did she know? And why didn't she send the letter? William closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Harry whispered, "Do you think she planned to give it to us?" "Maybe," William murmured. "Or maybe she planned to give it to someone else first. And that someone," Harry's voice cracked, "is the person she referenced at the bottom of this page." Because tucked beneath the date was a short line. A line neither brother wanted to say aloud. A line that pointed to someone still alive. Someone Diana trusted enough to involve in her fears. Someone outside the immediate family. Someone whose identity remained unread until they unfolded the second page. But right now, they weren't ready for that name. Not yet. The date already destabilized the world beneath their feet. The name would shatter it. The guilt that followed. William sank into the nearest chair, rubbing a hand across his face. She was trying to tell us something, he murmured. She must have been trying to warn someone. Harry stared at the floor. And she was alone. You could hear the heartbreak in his voice. Because for all the world's love of Diana, her final weeks were lonely. Isolated. Targeted by media. Misunderstood by the monarchy. Struggling to protect her sons while navigating a world increasingly hostile to her independence. Harry whispered, "What if she didn't know who to trust?" William looked up, eyes red. "Would you if you were her?" Harry shook his head slowly. No. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crushing. How the date changes everything. This letter wasn't written during a peaceful period. It wasn't written during a time of reconciliation. It wasn't written as a reflection. It was written as a warning. A warning dated so close to the tragedy that both brothers felt sick to their stomachs. Because the date implied three terrifying possibilities. Diana believed she was in immediate danger. Diana believed someone powerful was involved. Diana believed she needed evidence, documentation, in case something happened to her. And the monarchy, specifically Charles, had that evidence. For 30 years. Harry took a shaky breath. This changes everything. William nodded. It does. Harry looked at the letter again. And if this is true, William finished the sentence. Then the second page will prove it. They both turned slowly toward the folded page lying untouched on the table. The page with the additional handwriting. The page addressed to someone else. The page that might reveal not only what Diana feared, but who she feared. The page that would reveal the meeting she referenced. The person involved. The thing that frightened her in those final weeks. Harry's voice dropped to a whisper. William, if the date on the first page shook us. William nodded, never taking his eyes off the second page. Then the date on the second page will break us. He reached forward. Harry leaned in. And together, they unfolded the page. Diana's warning. I will be silenced. The second page didn't unfold smoothly. It didn't glide open like a fresh sheet of paper. It crackled. The edges resisted. The crease held its shape. The fold lines were deep, the kind formed only when something has been pressed shut for years, untouched, unbothered, unexposed to air or light. It felt like opening a time capsule no one was supposed to find. And as the page lay flat on the table, the brothers realized instantly. This page was different. The handwriting was tighter, sharper, more frantic. Not the elegant curves Diana was famous for. Not the graceful loops she used in personal letters. Not the smooth, confident lines she used when writing to her sons. This writing looked rushed, like she wrote it in a hurry, like something, or someone, was closing in, like she didn't have time to perfect the flow of her script. Harry noticed it first. Look at the pressure. William nodded. Hard strokes. She only wrote like that when she was scared. The air thickened. You could almost feel Diana there. The fear in her fingers, the urgency dripping from every line, the tension frozen in ink. Harry took a step closer. What did she write? The first sentence that froze them. William read it silently. Harry read it alongside him. Their eyes widened at the same moment. The first sentence wasn't poetic, wasn't emotional, wasn't cryptic. It was clear, direct, terrifying. I believe I will be silenced soon. Not I fear. Not I worry. Not I am concerned. I believe. Absolute. Calculated. Certain. That one sentence held more weight than any rumor, documentary, interview, or investigation over the last 30 years. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was Diana, expressing a belief that her life was in imminent danger. Harry's hand shot to his mouth. William closed his eyes, pain rippling across his face. They both knew their mother wasn't a dramatic woman. She didn't exaggerate danger. She didn't speak in reckless absolutes. When she said something, especially in writing, she meant it. Harry's voice cracked. She really thought. William stopped him. No, she didn't think. He pointed to the page. She knew. Why this sentence matters. That sentence changes everything. Because historians, tabloids, commentators, they all gave their interpretations of Diana's final fears. But here, in her own handwriting, was the truth her sons were never meant to read so late in life. She believed her life was under threat. Ask yourself, if your mother predicted she would be silenced and wrote it down, how would that shape the rest of your life? How would you look at your family, your history, your father, the crown? For William and Harry, that sentence alone was enough to crack something inside them. Not anger, not rage, something deeper, a kind of grief so sharp it borders on physical pain. Why didn't anyone tell them? Harry turned sharply to the aide. You're telling me this existed for 30 years and nobody said a word? The aide's face paled. We are only now discovering. Discovering? Harry snapped. This has been in the vault the entire time. This didn't magically appear. William stepped forward. How long has this specific folder been on record? The aide hesitated again. Harry slammed a hand on the table. Answer him. The aide closed his eyes briefly. It has been catalogued since 1998. William staggered back. Harry stared in disbelief. So he locked it away right after? That appears to be the case. William whispered, almost to himself. He knew. Those two words, simple, devastating, hung in the air like a ghost. Because the implication was impossible to ignore. Whether Charles believed the letter or not, whether he wanted to protect or suppress it, he kept it hidden, not from the public, from his own sons. Why was William's name on the envelope? Harry pointed the bottom of the page. Why was it readdressed to William? This wasn't originally meant for him. William nodded painfully. She wrote this to someone else. Someone she trusted. They scanned the lower section of the page. And then they saw it. The original addressee had been scratched out. Not erased. Not removed cleanly. Scratched out. Diana had written a name. Then crossed it out aggressively. So aggressively the ink tore into the paper. Harry leaned in. What name is underneath? William swallowed hard. It looks like. He hesitated. Even now, saying the name felt dangerous. It looks like she originally wrote it to one of her security contacts. Harry exhaled shakily. Which one? William read the faint letters. M.C.G. Harry stiffened. McGregor. Diana's former protection officer. Harry stepped back, eyes wide. She trusted him. William nodded. He left his post not long before she died. Harry's jaw tensed. And she crossed him out. William studied the scratches. No. This wasn't her crossing him out. The strokes don't match her handwriting. Harry froze. Then who did? A terrifying possibility. The room went silent. Deep silent. The kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat, loud and terrified in your ears. Someone, not Diana, crossed out the original recipient. Someone with access to the letter. Someone who handled it before it was sealed in the vault. Harry whispered, Are we saying what I think we're saying? William didn't answer. Harry continued anyway. Someone intercepted this letter. He took a breath, and they redirected it. William's voice was barely audible, but not to send it, to hide it. The temperature of the room seemed to drop, because that would mean someone didn't just hide Diana's fears. They blocked her message. The next paragraph, the warning intensifies. William forced himself to continue reading. Harry leaned in close. The second paragraph was even worse. I have been warned that certain individuals are planning an accident involving my car. William stopped reading aloud. He couldn't continue. Harry felt sick. It was too specific, too pointed, too close to what actually happened. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't exaggeration. This was a mother predicting her own fate. Harry whispered, She was trying to protect us. William nodded, tears forming. And she didn't trust anyone else to do it. Harry swallowed hard. And Father hid this. The aide stepped forward cautiously. We cannot confirm His Majesty ever read. Harry spun around. Don't lie. The aide froze. Harry pointed at the vault logs. You said it's been catalogued since 1998. That means someone decided exactly where it would go. Someone gave the order. Someone made the choice. The aide looked at the floor. We don't know who. But William knew. Harry knew. Anyone who understood the internal workings of the Royal Vault system knew exactly who had authority over private, unregistered items during that time. There was only one man. Charles. Diana's fears, revealed in her own words. William steadied himself and returned to the text. The next lines were heartbreaking. I am writing this only so my sons will understand the truth should anything happen to me. Harry choked. She wanted us to know. She wanted us to read this. William nodded, grief tightening his throat. And we never got the chance. The next sentence deepened the pain. I feel increasingly surrounded by alliances I cannot trust. The brothers looked at each other. What alliances? Harry whispered. William scanned the next part. There are conversations I am not meant to hear. Decisions being made around me. Plans whispered behind doors. Harry closed his eyes. She was scared. William whispered. She was alone. And then came the line that shook them to their core. I am certain something is being arranged behind the scenes. Arranged. Not accidental. Not coincidental. Arranged. Harry's voice trembled. She wrote this before Paris. William exhaled deeply. She knew something was wrong. She knew something was coming. Harry leaned his hands on the table. And for 30 years, nobody told us. The most damning line of all. Then came the line that explained why William's face drained of color the moment he first skimmed the page. There are people in positions of power who would prefer my voice to disappear. Power. People. Prefer her gone. Harry shook his head violently. No. 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 William read it again. The letter wasn't vague. It wasn't symbolic. It was a direct accusation. Not against one person. Against a system. A structure. An institution. And possibly someone close. Harry whispered. Do you think Father knew what this implied? William didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. The final line, the one that broke them. At the bottom of the second page, separate from the rest of the text, was a single line. Just one. Barely 5 words. Written more carefully than the sentences above. Less shaky. More controlled. Almost like she wanted to make sure the sons who read it one day would understand exactly what she meant. Protect the boys. At all costs. William shut his eyes. Harry swallowed hard. It was her final plea. Her final fear. Her final act of motherhood. And for 30 years, those words were locked in a vault. Hidden. Buried. Ignored. Until now. But as devastating as this page was, it wasn't the end. Because beneath the paper, beneath the second page, there was something else. Something small. Something folded. Something positioned there intentionally. A note. A third piece. And whatever was written on it wasn't meant to be found. Before William even reached for the small folded note tucked beneath the second page, something else settled heavily into the room. A realization, creeping, undeniable, suffocating. The letter wasn't just frightening. It wasn't just painful. It wasn't just prophetic. It had been hidden. Deliberately. Strategically. Purposefully. And that raised the most explosive question of all. Why? Why would King Charles, a man who claimed to love Diana once, a man who mourned publicly, a man who shaped the official narrative of her legacy, lock away her warning to their sons? What was he protecting? Or more disturbing, who was he protecting? Harry stared at the table like the pages might burst into flames. William rubbed his forehead, jaw clenched, each breath shallow, controlled, agonized. Then Harry said what both were thinking. Father didn't store this. He buried it. William didn't argue. Because this wasn't preservation. This wasn't archival. This wasn't some sentimental collection of Diana's private writings. This was suppression. And suppression always has a motive. The first possible motive, image protection. William broke the silence first, speaking more to the room than to Harry. He must have been protecting someone. Harry scoffed. Protecting who? Himself. William didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Because the letter's content looked terrible for Charles, even beyond emotional implications. Imagine the public finding out Diana predicted her death in writing. Imagine the world discovering she believed powerful individuals wanted her silenced. Imagine knowing that her warning existed before the crash, and that the one person who found it was her estranged husband. What would that do to Charles's image? Harry shook his head sharply. He always cared more about reputation than truth. William raised an eyebrow. Harry, it's true, Harry shot back. Everything was always about public perception, presentation, headlines, approval. He would have hidden anything that threatened the crown or himself. William looked down, guilt flickering in his eyes. He didn't want to say it. He didn't want to think it. But the possibility hung there like smoke. The monarchy's survival has always depended on controlling the narrative. And Charles? He's been controlling narratives his entire adult life. But would he go this far? Would he really hide a letter from the mother of his children, a letter warning of danger, just to protect his public image? Harry had no doubt. William, though? His face said he was fighting with himself. Because admitting that meant admitting his father's loyalty was not to family, but to institution. The second possible motive, guilt. Harry's eyes narrowed. You know the other reason. William shot him a warning look. But Harry pressed on. Guilt. The words sliced through the room. Because guilt, even unspoken, can make people hide things, avoid things, lock away things. What if he didn't want to face what she wrote because he knew he played a role? Harry asked. William frowned. A role in what? Harry stepped closer. A role in the fear she felt. A role in the environment she was trapped in. A role in making her believe she had no allies left. William lowered his eyes. Harry wasn't saying Charles harmed her. He wasn't making accusations. He was pointing to something simpler, and yet far more emotionally devastating. Maybe Charles hid the letter because he couldn't bear to read it. Maybe it proved that Diana died terrified and unheard, because the people closest to her refused to listen. Harry whispered. She wrote this because she felt hunted. And father, he never understood how scared she was. William didn't respond. Because deep down, he knew Harry was right about that part. Charles never understood Diana's fears. Or perhaps he refused to. And guilt like that? The kind that sits deep in someone's bones. That's the kind people bury. In vaults. In memories. In silence. The third possible motive, the system itself. William took a slow breath. There's another possibility. Harry looked up sharply. What? William turned, pacing thoughtfully. Maybe it wasn't him. Harry froze. What are you saying? William's voice dropped to a whisper. He might not have been the one who ordered it hidden. The air stilled. You're suggesting someone else in the institution did it? Harry asked, disbelief and fury mixing. It's possible. Harry's eyes widened. You mean someone used him? Used his authority? Used his name? William nodded. The monarchy isn't one man. It's a machine. A structure. A network. Decisions are made on behalf of the sovereign all the time, sometimes without their knowledge. But this, Harry snapped. This isn't a small detail. This is our mother's warning. William nodded. And that's why someone might have hidden it. Because if the monarchy feared the fallout, from the public, from media, from global scrutiny, they would have taken every measure to conceal anything that threatened stability. If the letter got out, William whispered, it could have triggered panic. Questions. Investigations. Harry threw up his hands. Exactly. Which is why they should have given it to us. William swallowed hard. Maybe they believed giving it to us would cause even more instability. Harry stared at him in disbelief. So hiding it was easier? William didn't answer. Who benefits from hiding the letter? Harry exhaled sharply. Let's break it down. He stepped toward the table, tapping the edges of the pages. Who benefits from hiding this? He raised one finger. Not us. We were the ones she wanted to protect. A second finger. Not her family. They never saw this either. A third. Not the public. They were told everything had been investigated. He raised a fourth finger. Not investigators. The absence of this letter changed entire timelines. Then he raised a fifth. The only people who benefit are the ones who didn't want this letter seen. William nodded slowly. So the question is, who didn't want it seen? The silence that followed was heavy, because that list was shorter than either brother wanted to admit. Flashback, the day after the crash. You ever go back in your mind to a moment you thought you understood, only to see it differently years later? That's what was happening to Harry. I remember the day after the crash, Harry said quietly. There were people talking, whispering, moving documents, sorting things. I didn't understand it then. William looked at him. What are you implying? Harry shook his head. I don't know. I remember chaos. Not grief, chaos. William slowly nodded. I remember father disappearing for long stretches of time. Meetings behind closed doors. Advisors coming and going at all hours. Harry whispered, do you think the letter was discovered back then? William replied, if it was found immediately after her death, then hiding it would have been the first thing they did. The timeline suddenly fit. Perfectly. Chillingly. Logically. Because if the letter had been discovered in those first chaotic days, the institution would have wanted it silenced before the world even had a chance to speculate. Harry rubbed his temples. The more we look at it, the more it feels orchestrated. William winced. That's a dangerous word. Harry stepped closer. Then why does it fit? Could Charles have been protecting them? William finally raised another possibility, one almost too painful to consider. What if he hid the letter to protect us? Harry looked stunned. What? William continued. What if he thought we were too young to handle this? Too vulnerable? Too traumatized? Harry stared at him. And 30 years wasn't long enough? William hesitated. Maybe he planned to show us eventually. Harry scoffed. When? When we were 70. When he was gone. When it didn't matter anymore. But something in William's expression shifted. He wasn't defending Charles. He wasn't excusing him. He was thinking of the one trait their father did possess. Avoidance. Charles avoided confrontation. Avoided emotional discussion. Avoided anything that made him uncomfortable or guilty. William whispered. He might have convinced himself he was sparing us. Harry shook his head violently. No, that's not sparing us. That's stealing from us. That's taking away our right to understand our own mother. And on that point, William couldn't argue. The consequences of hiding the truth. Think carefully about this. If Diana believed, she would be silenced. If she documented her fears. If she named individuals. If she begged someone to protect her sons. And that letter was withheld. What does that mean for the timeline? For the investigations? For the official explanations? William whispered. We lived our entire lives without knowing her final thoughts. Harry replied. And knowing she wanted us protected, desperately, changes everything. He wasn't wrong. Because the biggest consequence wasn't political. It was emotional. The sons Diana tried to reach never received her message. The protection she begged for never came. The warning she wrote went unread until it was too late. William speaks the fear both share. William suddenly stopped pacing. His face went pale. His voice dropped. Harry, what if hiding the letter wasn't just about reputation or guilt or the monarchy? Harry frowned. What do you mean? William swallowed hard. What if showing it to us would have raised questions he wasn't prepared to answer? Harry froze. Questions like what? William turned to him slowly. Questions about whether her death was truly an accident. Harry's breath caught. And whether someone inside the family knew more. Silence. Stone. Cold. Endless. Because this thought, was the one they had both avoided for decades. If Diana thought she would be silenced. If she named people. If she documented her fears. And Charles knew. Then hiding the letter wasn't just convenient. It was essential. The realization that broke the room. Harry gripped the edge of the table. If he hid this, then he must have known what it meant. William nodded. And if he knew what it meant, then he must have known it raised suspicion. Harry's voice trembled. And if he knew that, then keeping it hidden wasn't just a choice. He took a breath. It was a strategy. William felt dizzy. Harry whispered. Father didn't hide the letter to protect us. William met his eyes. He hid it to protect himself. The truth landed like a hammer. And both brothers knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. But before they could process it, before they could question it, before they could confront anyone, Harry noticed the small folded slip of paper lying under the second page. It wasn't part of the letter. It wasn't the same size. It wasn't written in the same ink. It looked like a later edition. Something someone placed inside after Diana wrote her warning. Harry reached for it. William grabbed his wrist. Wait. Harry swallowed. We need to see what it says. William hesitated, then nodded. Harry unfolded the slip. His eyes widened. The small folded slip of paper, so fragile it looked like it might dissolve under the weight of their fingertips, wasn't like the other two pages. It wasn't aged the same way. It wasn't creased the same way. It wasn't written with the same pen. This wasn't Diana's. This was someone else's handwriting. Someone who handled the letter after it left her hands. Someone with access. Someone with authority or proximity. And the moment Harry unfolded it, William instinctively reached out as if to steady the paper or himself. Because whatever this third slip contained, it wasn't written 30 years ago. It was written after. And that meant the story didn't end with Diana's warnings. It continued. It evolved. It changed hands. Someone saw the letter. Someone reacted to it. Someone wrote a note. Harry took a breath, bracing for impact. Read it, William said quietly. Harry began. The note that shouldn't exist. The slip contained only one sentence. But that sentence detonated like explosives inside both brothers' minds. Only 2 pages recovered, remaining pages unaccounted for. Harry froze. William blinked hard. 2 pages recovered? Remaining pages? Remaining. As in, more existed. More than these 2. Harry whispered. There were more pages. William didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew Diana didn't write short letters. She wrote deeply, emotionally, thoroughly. Her fears would have filled more than 2 pages. And this slip confirmed it. Some pages were missing. Not misplaced. Not lost. Unaccounted for. Harry's voice trembled with anger. Who wrote this? He flipped the slip over. At the bottom corner, faint, hurried, almost purposely incomplete, was a set of initials. R.C. Harry frowned. R.C. Who is? William's blood ran cold. He whispered, That's Robert Caulfield. Harry's eyes widened. Father's former private secretary? William nodded slowly. Yes, the one who managed all confidential correspondence in the late 90s. Harry stared at the paper like it was venom. So the palace knew there were missing pages. And they didn't look for them. William met his gaze. Or they did, and didn't want them found. Why missing pages change everything? The existence of missing pages introduced 2 terrifying possibilities. Possibility 1. Diana wrote more details, names, locations, incidents, that someone didn't want preserved. Possibility 2. Someone intentionally removed parts of the letter. Neither possibility was comforting. Both were devastating. Harry paced the room, one hand running through his hair. More pages. More warnings. More detail. And someone hid them. William stared at the letter. If these 2 pages were damning. Just imagine what the missing ones contain. Harry froze mid-step. And imagine who holds them now. Flashback. When rumors of the other letter first surfaced, there had always been whispers, hints, unconfirmed claims, stories passed quietly between journalists or mentioned in out-of-print books. Rumors of a second letter Diana wrote in her final weeks. A longer one, a more detailed one. One friend reportedly said, She wrote something and told me, if anything happens to me, this explains everything. But no such letter had ever been produced. Tabloids searched. Biographers speculated. Documentaries theorized. Nothing surfaced. Not a page. Not a fragment. Not a confirmation. Until now. Harry whispered. All those years, all those rumors, they were real. William nodded. And Father knew. The meaning of 2 pages recovered. Harry leaned over the table, reading the slip again. 2 pages recovered. Recovered from what? The word was suspicious. Recovered. Not found. Not received. Not stored. Recovered. Meaning. Taken from somewhere. Retrieved from someone. Separated from the rest. William exhaled. This implies a larger document was broken apart. Harry nodded. And only these 2 pages were recovered. Meaning. The remaining pages were removed. Or hidden. Or destroyed. Or held somewhere else. Harry clenched his jaw. So someone intercepted her letter, took pages out, and hid the rest. William whispered. We don't know that. Harry stepped toward him, furious. Yes, we do. This slip confirms it. He held the note up. Someone handled this after she wrote it. Someone cataloged it. Someone noted missing pages. William didn't argue. Because the evidence was right there, in black and white. Who intercepted the letter? Harry scanned the room, pacing. Okay, let's break it down. Who had access to Diana's private correspondences during those weeks? William listed them slowly. The royal household, her personal security, her private aide, and certain members of Father's staff. Harry's eyes narrowed. But not us. No, William said softly. Not us. Harry stopped pacing. So the letter was intercepted either before she sealed it or after she wrote it. William considered this. She crossed out the original recipient. Or someone did. If someone intercepted the letter after she wrote it, they may have removed the pages then. Harry nodded. But if someone intercepted it before she finished it, they might have taken pages as she wrote them. William shook his head. No, the handwriting shows the letter was complete when she wrote it. This page numbers themselves imply it was part of a larger set. Harry froze. Page numbers. William pointed at the lower right corner. A tiny, handwritten notation. 2/. And on the first page, 1/. Harry inhaled sharply. The missing number. The missing total. She wrote more. The number of missing pages. Harry whispered. We don't even know how many are gone. William's throat tightened. Could be 1. Could be 5. Could be 10. Harry looked horrified. She could have explained everything. William nodded. And those explanations are gone. Why the missing pages are the most dangerous part. Harry steadied himself. So whoever took the missing pages. Those pages were the real threat. William nodded. These 2 pages were bad enough. But the missing ones? Those held the specifics. Harry swallowed. Names. William nodded. Events. Harry clenched his fists. Plans. William's voice dropped. And proof. The room went cold. Because the letter they read was devastating, but it didn't explicitly name anyone or detail any specific plot. The missing pages might. Who benefits from missing pages? Harry spoke through gritted teeth. Let's think strategically. Who gains by removing the most incriminating parts? William hesitated. Anyone who was involved in the decisions she referenced. Harry nodded. Anyone who knew she was gathering evidence. Anyone who wanted her quiet. Anyone who feared her influence. Anyone with power. And that list, though unspoken, wasn't long. Harry whispered. Father could have removed them. William looked down. Or someone removed them to protect him. Harry's tone sharpened. To protect the institution. William didn't argue. Because deep down, they both knew. If the monarchy believed the missing pages could spark scandal, they would have done anything to contain them. And if someone believed Diana was about to expose something explosive, they would have taken steps. Harry whispered. She was silenced. And her letters were silenced with her. Why the slip of paper was left behind. Harry lifted the slip again. But why leave this note? Why leave any trace at all? William shook his head. Maybe whoever removed the pages didn't expect anyone to ever see this again. Maybe they forgot this slip existed. Maybe it slipped between the pages and was overlooked. Or maybe someone wanted us to find it. Harry paused. What are you saying? William's eyes narrowed. What if someone inside the palace disagreed with hiding the letter? What if someone hid this note intentionally, waiting for the day it would be discovered? Harry considered it. Like a breadcrumb trail. William nodded. Left for us. Harry stared at the slip again with new eyes. Someone wanted the truth out. They couldn't reveal it themselves, but they could leave pieces. William concluded. And this slip is one of those pieces. Who could have left the clue? Harry reread the initials. R.C. William's expression softened. Robert Caulfield was known for being conflicted. He loved the monarchy, but he also loved Diana. Harry blinked. You think he left this behind on purpose? William nodded. He might have known he couldn't expose the truth during his career. Harry added. But he could ensure the truth wasn't completely erased. They both looked at the note again. A clue. A warning. A crack in the cover-up. R.C. may have risked everything. Quietly. Carefully. Brilliantly. Harry whispered. Then where are the missing pages now? William stared at the vault door. Either gone forever. Harry shook his head. Or held by someone who shouldn't have them. The slip pointed to a location. Harry flipped the note back over. And noticed something at the bottom he hadn't seen before. A faint pencil mark. Barely visible. Almost erased. But unmistakable. A set of numbers. Coordinates? A reference code? A vault subsection? Harry squinted. It looks like storage code 3B17. William froze. That's not part of Father's vault. Harry looked at him sharply. Then what is it? William turned slowly toward the aide. The aide swallowed. That code belongs to an off-site archive. Harry stepped forward. Off-site where? The aide hesitated. William spoke sharply. Where? Finally, the aide spoke. An undisclosed property formerly used by the royal household for sensitive materials. Harry's breath hitched. You're saying the missing pages were stored somewhere else? And the aide nodded. Yes, Your Highness. Harry stared at the slip. Someone moved the missing pages. Someone hid them in a secondary location. Someone left this coded slip behind knowing one day William and Harry might finally look for them. Harry whispered. Then we have to go there. William nodded, face set with determination. We're going. Before the brothers could even begin planning how to reach the off-site archive, something shifted in the air of that vault room. Something heavier than shock, something deeper than anger, something colder than suspicion. Grief. Not the grief they had lived with.